We're currently launching a new music series. We haven't done this before. This is our second time doing it. We're very happy to partner with the Hong Kong Bach Choir on promoting their upcoming concert and also bring some music to this place. You may know this place previously as the LKF Hotel or LKF Tower. We actually did a renovation 2 years ago, and right now it's called Winham Social for this lobby space. We've been actively engaging with Hong Kong arts and culture groups on bringing together exhibitions and also salon talks like this. So without further ado, I will pass now the time to April, the chairperson of the Hong Kong Youth Choir, who will be introducing Jerry, our speaker today, the music director of the Hong Kong Bach Choir. And and then you can get to enjoy some talks on music and also some wine. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm April. I'm sure a lot of you know about me because I saw a lot of familiar faces here. So this is a new experiment, and as you know, in the past few years, we've been doing pre-concert talks online, and that's because of COVID. And this is the first time that we are actually able to pull this off. And as a very small, relatively small arts organization, it's actually not easy to put together an event like this. And that's mostly because of venues. And so this year we are very lucky to have Wyndham Social as our partner because they provided a venue. So they made the impossible possible. So thanks a lot for your support. And I would also like to thank Pinewood Wine for supporting the wine for this event. Because without wine, I'm not sure if we can pull people in so far in advance before concerts. So thank you, Pinewood Wine, and thank you, Michael, who is the marketing manager of our choir as well as a wine professional working at Pinewood Wine. So if you have any questions about the wine menu tonight, you can have a chat with him. So he's the mastermind behind the wine pairing between our wine offerings and our repertoire. So there's a concept behind this, and so chat with him afterwards. And we also got event discount on all the wines over here. So just take a look at the menu, and you can go to our event special site with the QR code on the right-hand side. And the offer will last until after our concert on May 31st. And it is a pre-concert talk because there's a concert coming up, and it will be on Saturday, May the 10th. And the concert will feature Mendelssohn's Lobgesang, which is the theme of tonight's talk. And then there will also be Dallapiccola's Piccola, and Rautavaara's Balada. So I guess we can start, and I'll hand the mic over to Jerome Hoberman, our music director.
Thanks, April.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Hope I see more of you. Is this on? Is it on? You can hear me? Okay. So I thought I'd begin tonight with a little bit of sort of personal history. When you study music in a university or a conservatory, there are basically two core courses that everyone does, that there's usually a series, 2 or 3 years of. You have music history, which is basically studying how we got to where we are now, except it never is. It usually starts with things like Gregorian chant, very early music that's 1,000 or more years old. And they take it as far as they can, and since most of the teachers are early music specialists, they don't like to go fast through that, so you never get very far. But that's okay, because then you also have what's called music theory. And music theory is basically studying the grammar of Western music. What the rules were at various moments in time. um, the rules that composers followed in writing the music, and also the rules that developed as a result of what some great composers accomplished. So you mainly focus for harmony, which is how one chord leads to another, on the music of Bach. And you study counterpoint, which is how lines of music combine successfully together, move together in a way that both pleases and follows rules. And that tends sometimes to also follow Bach, but tends to go further back into the 16th century, the 1500s, and the music of Palestrina. So when I was a student, I studied all that, and then I also, well, then you move on, and you take courses in what's called analysis. And what analysis is, if theory is like grammar, then analysis is like a biology class where you dissect animals to see what they're made of. So you kind of dissect pieces of music to see what they're made of. The difference is that in biology class you can't really reassemble the animal after you've dissected it, but you can in music. So you do that, and in analysis classes, the real focus tends to be the music of Johannes Brahms. So Brahms is sort of the great model of expertise in how to make pieces where all the various little parts of it somehow relate to each other. And then I decided I wanted to be a conductor, so I studied conducting, and as a conducting student and then as a beginning conductor, I conducted and studied a huge range of music. Bach and classical composers like Mozart and Beethoven and Schubert and Rossini, and then romantic period composers like Schumann and Wagner and Bruckner, and then later Tchaikovsky and Dvorak and people like that, and even Mahler. And then later on, that is later in musical history, some more modern composers, people like Gershwin and Leonard Bernstein and Aaron Copland, and then more modern composers, Roger Sessions and people like that. Schoenberg, of course, and Weber, who are scary names to a lot of people. You'll notice one name I'm not mentioning, and that is Mendelssohn. In all my years of study, as an undergraduate and then all my years studying conducting, I never looked at one note of Mendelssohn. Sometimes, I mean, there was music you would hear in a concert. Some of it, as we all know, some of his music is very popular. But it never was, it seems like it was never seen as music that was worth serious study. Mendelssohn is a lightweight. Well, then I got to a doctoral program in conducting, and I was in Baltimore, and I was fortunate to be in Baltimore because as a student at the Aspen Music Festival in school, I had had occasion to encounter the great conductor who was the music director then of the Baltimore Symphony, a Romanian conductor named Sergio Comisiona, who took a liking to me and invited me to his rehearsals and sat with me, and we went through scores together and things like that. And I think my first year in Baltimore, he conducted Mendelssohn's Second Symphony, Lobgesang, which I had no knowledge of. This was completely new to me, and it floored me. I mean, this was incredible. I had never experienced any Mendelssohn like this. But again, Mendelssohn is not something you study, so it's sort of put aside. But it was always there in the back of my mind. Even a bit later, finally, I encountered Mendelssohn. This was after I was out of school. I was already doing some conducting, that is, professionally. I had an occasion to study with yet another famous Romanian conductor, Sergiu Celibidache, who used some examples from Mendelssohn as demonstrations of how most musicians play simple things badly. And he used, I remember a couple of examples he used of pieces by Mendelssohn. And he showed us how they should be played, and then how they're usually played. But that was my only experience of Mendelssohn in any kind of learning environment. But of course, I mean, I did conduct some, and fine, and then life goes on. So about 5 or so years ago, I had this piece in the back of my mind, and I thought, you know, it's a good piece to do, we should do it. So we programmed Mendelssohn's Second Symphony, Lobgesang, and then COVID hit, and we had to postpone it. But again, it's still there in the back of our minds, and so now we're doing it. So that's all by way of introducing the few topics I want to focus on. What is this piece? Why is Mendelssohn neglected in the ways that I've described? And who Mendelssohn really is? So a little bit of background about this piece, and then I'll bring it back to what I was talking about, studying analysis a bit later. So this piece came about relatively late in Mendelssohn's very short life. Mendelssohn died at the age of 38, probably largely from overwork and depression. A few months after his sister died, his sister who he was very, very close to, he died probably of a stroke. So this is called, we know it as Symphony Number 2, but it's really not his second symphony. Or the numbering of Mendelssohn's symphony is all mixed up because he didn't publish things necessarily at the time he wrote them. He did a lot of revision. We think of Mendelssohn as one of these fantastically, magically talented people who kind of breathed music, but he was actually an extremely hardworking, disciplined composer who revised and revised and revised and revised, much as the way Mozart did. So he had written well, all of his other symphonies, at least, he had begun, if he hadn't fully realized them. So in 1840, or actually in 1839, Mendelssohn was commissioned by the city fathers of Leipzig in Germany. Leipzig being one of the big commercial centers of Germany at the time, of the German states at the time, and kind of the center of the printing industry, the publishing industry in Germany. So 1840 was thought of as the 400th anniversary of the invention of movable type printing by Johannes Gutenberg. And so this was a big deal in a place like Leipzig, because it's the publishing industry, and it's also a big deal for Germany in general, because Gutenberg's invention led directly to Martin Luther's Reformation. That is, without the ability to publish widely and cheaply, so that everybody can have access to anything that's written, what Luther had imagined, had come up with, would never have made its way beyond a relatively small class of professional religious people. And Germany overall is sort of the root of Lutheranism, of the Protestant Reformation. So this was a big deal, and so Mendelssohn wrote a big piece for it. He did make some revisions afterwards, but he never published it. So it was only published some years after his death. And although Mendelssohn had not given it the name Symphony, the publisher did, because there was a gap. There was a first symphony, and there was a third symphony, and fourth symphony, and fifth symphony, but here they had something they could stick in and call it the second symphony, so that's what it became. So that's the background of the piece. But I want to get back to what I was saying about analysis and Brahms and the neglect of Mendelssohn, because this is where things really get interesting. So the reason we study Brahms, I mean, how many people can think of any music by Brahms? Anybody? A little bit. Brahms, one of the things Brahms is known for, other than writing beautiful music, is that he would take a very small cell, maybe just a few notes, and manipulate those few notes in such a way that turned around and upside down and frontwards and backwards and played against itself and extended and so on, it can form the basis for even an entire symphony. And that's why he's studied in analysis classes, because that kind of intricate, kind of Swiss watchmaker kind of construction is the sort of thing that most composers in the first half and into the second half of the 20th century focused on. In fact, Arnold Schoenberg, who we think of as, the arch modernist, the founder of modernism in music, for better or worse, I guess you might say. Schoenberg wrote a famous article, a famous essay in around 1946 or 47 called Brahms the Progressive, because during Brahms' lifetime even, Brahms was sort of set up by the music critic establishment as the antithesis, the opposition to Wagner. Wagner in his time was the great modernist who was taking music in new directions that nobody had done, further and further and further away from what was old. And so whatever Brahms did must be, therefore, conservative. So there was Wagner, the progressive, and Brahms, the conservative. And Schoenberg set out in this article to show, using examples from Brahms, how Brahms was actually the great progressive composer in doing the sort of intricate things that I was describing. And in fact, Schoenberg looked to Brahms, saw himself as the successor not to Wagner, but to Brahms. So Brahms is the great prophet of modernism in that way of looking at things. How does that relate to Mendelssohn and to Lobgesang? Well, let's listen first to the beginning of the Mendelssohn. Just a minute, don't play it yet. So, the way this symphony works is there are three instrumental movements, just like a normal symphony. There's a full-scale, complete symphonic first movement. Then there's a kind of abbreviated scherzo, a dance-like movement that's typical in symphonies. It's abbreviated in the sense that it doesn't fully round itself off as scherzos typically did. And then there's, again, a relatively brief slow movement. Again, very typical. And then we hear kind of like suggestions of the opening of the symphony, and that's when the chorus comes in and the voices take over. And that's a big multi-movement piece. You might think this sounds something like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which also has 3 instrumental movements and then a choral finale. But the proportions are completely different, and kind of the argument within the piece is different. Beethoven's piece is about 2/3 instrumental and 1/3 choral, or vocal. Mendelssohn's is the other way, about 1/3 instrumental, as if he's in a hurry to get to the choral parts, the vocal parts. Beethoven begins his choral movement with a negation of everything that comes before. He plays a little bit of the first movement, and the orchestra says, no, not that. And then the second movement, no, not that. And the third movement, again, the orchestra jumps in, no, not that. And then the voice comes in and again says, none of those things, we need something new. And then we get the last movement. The Mendelssohn doesn't work like that. There's no negation. There's a kind of cyclical return of this theme that we'll hear now. So we have dom, dom, da dom, da dom, 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 da dom. Nice tune. It's played by the trombones. The trombonists are very excited to play this piece. Now that theme, dom, dom, da dom, da dom, 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 da dom, sounds a little bit elaborate in a sense, but it's really, that's kind of the clothing. If we strip it of its clothing, forgive the analogy, and we see just the kind of skeleton of this, it's very simple. Dom, 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 dom. So we have this figure, this skip up, dom, dom, little bit of a scale. Dum, dum, dum. So we have that. So we have that figure, kind of like how dry I am, right? And that actually has two parts. Dum, dum, which can be separated from dum, dum, dum. So already he's got this theme that has a complete form and then an elaborated form. And then also it can be broken up into two little cells of that. And Mendelssohn actually plays with that throughout the piece. Let me show you a few examples. So let's go to the next one, which is the beginning of the choral part. It'll be very familiar. The chorus will come in, so that's all familiar. But now we get to a little bit later in the piece. We move on to a new theme. Let's go ahead to we have the dum da dum bum 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 bum. So dum 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 da dum da dum 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 da dum da dum dum dum. So what he's done is switch the order of those two elements. So he builds a new theme simply by switching the order of these two elements. So that's relatively simple. Except Beethoven didn't do that. Mozart didn't do that. Yeah, Bach did stuff like that. But Bach's a long time ago. And in a different kind of style. Let's go to the next one. So instead of dum, 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 we reverse the order. Dum, 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 dum. Now we have that interval, which is sort of the same as dum, dum, da, dum. Of course, for those of you who've studied music theory, you know that a fourth, dum, dum, is the complement to the fifth, dum, dum. So, here again, Mendelssohn is constructing something completely new from the same material. And we have one more example. Different, but it's exactly the same music, kind of with all the decorations of the beginning, the trombones removed. And because it's in a different key, it feels a little bit different, but it's there. Once I point it out to you, you can recognize it. That's the thing. That is, nobody's expected to listen to this piece and say, oh, I hear where he got it from there, and I remember in measure 35, you know, that's not the way these things work. They work subliminally. We simply recognize that there's a unity here that we may not have been aware of before. Now, what I'm describing to you is manifestly present in this piece from 1840, 1839-40. It's not what composers were doing then, but it is what we studied Brahms in analysis classes for. That's exactly the sort of thing that Brahms is noted for. So my question is, why are we studying Brahms instead of studying Mendelssohn? Is it just that Brahms had a better press agent? I don't know the answer, but I have my suspicions. Now, Brahms was, although he didn't see himself that way, Brahms was portrayed as the opponent of Wagner. Wagner being the big man. Wagner was the Donald Trump of music in the late 19th century. You either love him or you hate him. Wagner wrote a book in the 1850s, published a book, first anonymously and then with his name. The book was called Der Judentum in Musik, Jewishness in Music. And this was an attack on Jews in music. And the main objects of Wagner's hatred were two composers with Jewish backgrounds. One was Meyerbeer, who was German-born but became the great French opera composer, who was Jewish, and the second was Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn, his grandfather was Moses Mendelssohn, was the great philosopher and public intellectual, and kind of the father figure for the Enlightenment in the Jewish world that brought Jews into the mainstream in Europe. His son, Mendelssohn's father, as many affluent and educated Jews did in Germany and Hungary in particular in the 19th century, converted to Lutheranism. Mendelssohn's father, that is Felix Mendelssohn's father, did so probably for commercial reasons. That is, he was a banker and it was good business to be Christian rather than Jewish. But Mendelssohn himself was born Christian, was baptized at 7 years old, and was a devout Lutheran his entire life, without ever rejecting his Jewish origins, as his father tried to do. His father wanted to change the family name from Mendelssohn to Barthold. Felix Mendelssohn was willing to use the two names together, but he refused to drop the name Mendelssohn, which was an obviously Jewish name. Now, Today, we reject attitudes like Wagner's, especially after Hitler. The idea of taking a racial category and saying that anybody who is in this racial category is incapable of feeling the things that we, whoever we are, that we feel. That's an attitude that most people reject. The idea that Jews were parasites in European culture and could only imitate and not actually create within the culture. That's an idea that is rejected. But that just shows us how powerful an ugly idea is once it takes root. Even though we say these things and we feel these things and we believe these things, the fact is that in this case, with Mendelssohn and Brahms, Wagner won. Because ever since that time, we see Mendelssohn as a lightweight. And we listen to Mendelssohn as somebody who wrote beautiful melodies and songs without words and travelogues, an Italian symphony and a Scottish symphony and an overture about the Hebrides, the islands of Scotland, and so on, that these are pretty genre paintings in music. And that attitude keeps us from actually penetrating into the essence of what this great composer accomplished. So in playing this piece, what I hope is that we'll be able, you and I, those of you who are participating in the performance, will be able to reveal to the audience what absolutely fantastic music on every level that Felix Mendelssohn was able to do. So next time we'll talk about the other part of this this topic, revolutionary music for a turbulent time, and how this piece by Mendelssohn that's associated with the invention of printing inspires the first half of the program, which includes pieces from the 20th and 21st century based on Spanish poetry of the 20th century, and why those are a good pairing, the way these wines are with the music. Anyway, thanks for listening, and enjoy the party.
I'm gonna just have a few words before you guys come and grab some more wine. So, thank you so much for Jerry sharing. My wine pairing philosophy is very simple. Just because the origin of the conductor, the composer, where they come from, then I pair with the different wines. For example, the first one that you had was an Italian Prosecco. So I'm not sure whether you know the difference between different sparkling wines. You must have heard of champagnes, Proseccos, or sometimes cavas. So they sound like similar to beginners, but they're actually quite different. So Prosecco, in terms of the bubbles, is actually more refreshing than champagne, while champagne focuses on the delicacy of the breadcrumbs, of the toasty flavors. But Prosecco is more about refreshing. but fresh fruits. So it's a very good wine for all purposes, for appetizers or happy hours or even like dessert. It works as well. And then some of you are having the red wine already. That's a Spanish red wine. It's a mixture of Syrah, Garnacha, and Samso, and it has been oaked in French oak barrels for 16 months. So it has a very good balance between the oakiness and French fruit, the fruit flavors here. And we have some olives and like the sausages, and then we have some chips and cheeses as well. They all pair very well with red wine, so you can just feel free to come and grab some food here. And then the final wine, which most of you haven't had it yet, it's a Alsatian Gewürztraminer. It's quite a rare grape, I would say. It's not very common in Hong Kong, but it's one of my favorite grapes because it has a very strong aroma of rose and lychee. It's very fruity, very floral, and it's kind of like medium sweet as well. It smells like a perfume actually. And it's very good wine for like dessert or even like a pre-drink to refresh your palate, and it works like that. And I'm not sure if any one of you wondered the order of the wine, because normally you drink sparkling and then white and red. But for this order, I change it to sparkling and then red and then the white. That's simply because of the sweetness. Because the final wine, the Gewürztraminer, is medium sweet. After drinking something sweet or eating some kind of dessert, and then you drink the dry red wine, it will turn very acidic, it turns bitter, it doesn't taste good. That's why I changed the order from the traditional white and red to red and then a medium sweet white. So just a very simple sharing. If you have more questions about the wines, do come to me here and I'll answer you. And if you want to make any order of the wines, go to the QR code of the bottom right corner here. I've done a special discounted page. So they are at very good prices, and if you want to pick up any wines right now, I do have like 2 to 3 bottles here in case you want to pick up. Otherwise, you buy 6 bottles and get free delivery to your home directly. So feel free to ask me for any wine-related questions. And beside wines, as the marketing manager of the Bach, I also want to say something about the social media, because I'm also in charge of social media of the Hong Kong Bach. So if you have, I believe that most of you have done it already, but if you haven't done so, please follow our Facebook and Instagram. We've posted our concert poster and some of videos or photos about the concert already. So please share it to your friends and family so that we get more exposure and as well as boosting up the ticket sales as well. So thank you so much, and thank you William Social again for having this wonderful space for us. So I'll give you my back to April as conclusion.
I don't have much to
Okay.
say after this, but why is Mendelssohn sweet?
That's a very good question, because to me, that's my very personal experience. The very first time that I sing a very big piece of classical music was Mendelssohn's Elijah, actually. It was back in the uni days. So to me, Mendelssohn has a kind of, I'm not sure if Jerry would agree, but he has that kind of ability to move my emotions in a way. When I sing it or when I listen to it, it kind of moves me a lot. And for me, I personally really like desserts and sweet stuff. So I see it like how sweet things moves me in a way. So that's why I chose a kind of like medium sweet and fruity and floral thing to pair with the Mendelssohn. But of course, that's also because I want everybody to go with sweetness in their mouth, not with bitterness in their mouth. That's always my concept as well. So thank you for asking that.
So, before we break into a party, do any of you have any questions for Jerry or for Michael? That you just raise your hands or you just come to them individually? Anything? If not, I think that's it for the formal presentation, and I guess you guys can start having snacks and have more drinks. And so next week's presentation will be on Dallapiccola's work and Rautavaara's work. So I hope more of your friends will be back in town next week, so please help spread the words and bring more people. And so I guess that's it. Thanks for coming in. And please also fill in the event survey that we have. It's the other QR code on the left-hand side. So this would really help us improve if you fill that in. It's a Google form. It wouldn't take long. It's only 10 really short questions. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming in.
No, I mean, just enjoy the party. Thank you for coming. Have a good chat and have some good wines.
Thank you.
Thank you.